I acknowledge on behalf of the board, this meeting is I'm John Curtis, their attendance this evening are Pastor Trustees and Richard Franklin, Susan Wilson, Trustee Hagan sends his response to see if anyone is unable to. Also in attendance are Superintendent Dr. Jerry Morrow, Associate Superintendent Morgan Phil Sidnick, as well as Secretary Treasurer Kevin Patrick. Present also are Emily Cronshaw, Executive Assistant Superintendent and Secretary Treasurer, Jennifer Patrick, Manager of Communications, and providing technical support, Mark Drake, Manager of IT. Please note that there's a 20-second production delay between the live viewing and the question and answer function is open for questions on the item of this meeting. Questions that are posed during the meeting will be addressed at the end of the session. To begin, I would like to acknowledge Women's Day. So, ladies around the world, over the past 2 years, there has been a degree of upheaval in our lives with COVID-19 epidemic. Now, with the concerns caused by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, both events have engendered a great deal of coverage. While these events may be concerning for adults, they may also be upsetting for children who do not have the knowledge or experience to process the fears. If you have concerns about the child's reaction to information on how to talk to them about concerns, School District 72 has provided information that may help. This information can be found on the district website by selecting News, which will then have a list of resources provided by the Ministry of Education under the title Parent Tips, talking about war and conflict. These resources are a good place to start to help parents talk to their children about these sometimes frightening. During the last School District 72 Board of Education meeting, Secretary Treasurer Patrick informed the board that it was facing a $1 million deficit this year, primarily due to the increased cost of replacing teachers who were asked not to attend school if they were exhibiting severe COVID-19. The difference between the budgeted and actual cost was almost $850,000. This was in addition to a projected deficit of almost $2 million due to increased costs of the government's requirement that boards reduce accumulated reserves by providing educational services. Last year, the board's accumulated reserve surplus was $4.3 million. It now stands at $1.3 million. The emergency unrestricted reserve account. This has serious implications for the 2022-23 budget. The provincial budget of 2022-23 was released in February, included a 3.8% increase in education funding. However, this increase was almost entirely targeted to cover enrollment increases across the province. At the time the budget was released, inflation was calculated at 5%. With recent events increasing energy costs, it is likely to increase. The failure to fund school districts for inflation in effect means that districts are facing self-funding. With the increased cost of benefits, with approximately 12% of the budget of the district budget subject to inflationary pressures, it is likely that we will be forced to deal with additional costs of an extra $400,000 to $500,000. Without going into detail, the reality is that school districts by law are not allowed to run deficits. This means that next year it is extremely unlikely that our district will be unable to maintain a level of service that is currently best. Since almost 90% of the district's budget is on staffing costs, this means that the board will face the unpleasant task of having to make cuts in services that are provided to students. This is particularly unfortunate because at a time when educational resources are most needed, some funding for them is in effect being cut in an insidious way by inflation, which is not funded by the government of Columbia. Last week, the Minister of Education, in collaboration with First Nations Education Steering, announced that the Ministry of Education is implementing an Indigenous-focused graduation requirement for all students. This is an important policy decision in the education sector of truth and reconciliation that is inclusive of all students, shows the importance of work and learning for each student in their future educated citizens. Implementation of the new requirement is expected to involve a phased approach to the effect of the 2023 school year. Finally, this is the last week of school before the spring break. Schools will be closed from March 12th to the 28th, returning on Tuesday, March 29th. My hope that everyone in school district 72 should take time to recuperate and enjoy what I hope to be our future. Enjoy your break. Please come back reinvigorated. Here.
Thank you very much. Today is providing appreciation for the many brilliant, inspiring leaders who are part of our organization and who provide daily inspiration. We are so thankful that you make for your leadership every day. We have student conference happening on Thursday this week, other than those students who are at very high in life. And this is an excellent chance for parents to connect with the cards that students received last month. I know learning goals for students for the remainder of the year. But I wanted to share as well that during the student lending, all of our support staff will be involved in various wide range of professional activities. This is going to take a minute, but I'm going to acknowledge the students that will carry high tonight. The first group of students that I want to acknowledge is the senior boys basketball team, who for the first time in history have qualified for finish in our New Vancouver lady tournament. I want to congratulate as well the senior girls basketball team from Kerry High, who's just returned from provincials as well. Wrestlers who qualified for the provincial championship. Okay, Phoenix, Timberline, and Kerry High. In addition to our athletes, I want to express congratulations to some Kerry High and Timberline students who returned from the Skills Canada North Island Regional on Wednesday last week. These students returned with awards in the following categories: cabinet making, welding, computer animation, carpentry, TV video production, digital art, website design, electronics, and animation. For a full comprehensive list of the award winners and their categories, please have a look at our school district website. Congratulations to all of those students. Amazing accomplishments. And as this is the final week before spring break, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of so many staff who helped cover classes, support colleagues, and adjusted for students as we dealt with significant absence during January and the first half of February during the Omicron. With much reduced sick absences, and cautiously optimistic that we will have a more normal spring in our school. I would also like to express gratitude to our parents who have been so patient and understanding through the many changes that have been required as we have responded to the pandemic. I look forward to welcoming everybody back after a much-deserved spring break, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful future.
Thank you, Dr. Wall. And the suggested motion is minutes of February 2022 hereby approved as today. Trustee Fritz. Okay. All those in favor? Motion carried. Is there any business arising from hearing none? Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, we'll move then to approval of the agenda. Suggested that the agenda is hereby approved by report the board decision March 2022 confidential board meeting. Secretary Eddie.
In the consultation, we did discuss and legal staff who were
There are no public. be a month.
As you mentioned,
Just prove you. Who's not here?
no.
Good evening, to introduce and interpret those life officer at Kevin Hagan, our educational technology coordinator. And probably be a few months ago, one of the projects we were working with both for teacher at the time, Andrea, and some exciting technology, which I'm often excited about and share with us. So this is a collaboration that we're going to done with the students and excited to have an event that looks like. So over to these.
Thank you for having us. We actually did have a little bit of technology. So we have experts. So Andrea and I are here to, like Morgan said, tell you a little bit about the project that we were working on using technology for literacy. And I put an F on literacy on purpose because as I go through this project, how using technology not only helps support our students with our, our ELA type literacy with communication. We also look at emotional literacy, digital literacy, media literacy, and visual literacy, all within one project. So schools. And so how do we do this? So people always think, Sam, I want to do a project using this particular application. And they say, what do you want? Well, what's the learning that you want to come out of this? I don't know. So for the technology person, I always have to say, well, you have to think about the learning that one needs to occur rather than that will happen. So what we do is I say to them, what do you want your students to do? Right? So we match it to a topic. So we're thinking about our SFL, life or all in modified program. So it's not like we can open up the, go to the particular competency for a modified student, but they still have learning outcomes in their IEPs. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the students and how we incorporate that with technology. But the really cool thing about technology now is that we can take these students who aren't part of the program and we can start differentiating the project for them in a very easy way because we're not having to work together. So we talk about universal design learning and differentiation, all very. So we got together with our students and we provided them with this practice and also what this looks like. This is basically on the skills for IC, who has been working towards our digital literacy and literacy in general. And this is what she produced in about 40 minutes. And this is one of our hiring, but this is 5 minutes long. So what we're going to do is jump through some of the things and talk about that. So,
Huh, I seem to be lost. I can't find where my camp is. Let's think. Is it this way? No, is it this way? Probably this way. I will go check, I guess. Huh? Ah! Who are you? Hi, I'm Sasquatch. I belong to the forest. I guard the forest, and it seems to be that you are trespassing. Sasquatch. I belong to the forest. I guard the forest, guard the forest, and it seems to be that you are trespassing. Oh, it's okay. If you didn't know, it's fine. You seem to be pretty lost. Are you trying to look for your camp? Yeah, yes I am. Since you're lost, I'd be more than happy to help you find where your camp is. Really? Thank you so much. Yeah, no problem. Um, I'm Max, by the way. I'm Kai. It's nice to meet you. It's nice to meet you too. Anyway, let's get on with our journey. My nose smells campfire heading this way. Follow me. Okay, will do.
Now we, you
Uh-oh. What? I see someone over there. Wait, isn't this your campsite? Yeah, yes it is. Who? Mwahaha. This is my campsite now. What? Dude.
now. He's introduced the camera. Move. And so through and through there's and that's what all this
Dude, seriously, this is my campsite. I was here first. All my stuff is here, including. Bye. Bye. Goodbye. I miss you. I will come back and visit with you guys another time. Maybe not tonight. Or you can stay tonight and we can have s'mores. Actually, that sounds good. I will do that. I will stay for s'mores.
walk through the um, about so in there now. I never ever I taught you how to do elements now. So then what's really important is what we teach. And again, you are using and we want them, right? These are just this is a scaffold that we work with them. All the output of And we that's okay. You yeah. Scene, he did the dialogue, the voiceover, and then the student did the rest. And by the end of it, he was like, Mrs. Hagan, you gotta see this, you gotta see this, you gotta see this. He wanted to know how to share it out, send it to his dad, and be at home. So we're done now. Now what do we do with it? And again, teachers say to me all the time, Shannon, how do I now take this project that I know that every different student might have a different project? About the project, it's about your learning outcomes. So with Andrea's students here, again, because they are on their own modified program, we're not assessing the competencies, we're assessing the learning outcomes. The communication and nonverbal communication. And if you looked at as that interactions were occurring, there was one point where the young man saw the Sasquatch come up to him, and the young man kind of jumped up and turned, startled, and then came back again. There is the interaction of nonverbal communication that the student could demonstrate just by interacting the characters. Very cool. So then we know that, and I'm telling you, that's how you guys know, is that we don't just assess the final project, because assessment isn't just a one and done. We look at the whole process. We look at that triangulation that occurs. We look at the interactions. We look at the conversations. We listen to them. We watch them as everything is done. And then we look at their evidence of learning. And I don't call it a product. I call it an evidence of learning because they're demonstrating what they learned to me. So after all that, why? Why are we continuing to use technology when sometimes, yes, we have technology fatigue and maybe it's a little bit more work, but look at all the benefits that we have out of it. We are supporting development of literacies with that S on there, digital media. As a matter of fact, I'm going into the middle school after spring break, and we're looking at numeracy literacy with data interpretation through graphs and all the rest through Excel. Building capacity. So I developed this lesson with Andrea and Dion with a traveling set of iPads that I come with it. I say, I come with it for the first day. I deliver the lesson. I model how it's going to be taught. And then they stay there for 10 days. Within that 10 days, another teacher used it twice in her own class because she saw what could be done with it. UDL and differentiation. So like 8 different students produced 8 different things, and was it any more work for us? Absolutely not. Students as creators, if there's one thing that I do by the time that I leave or my job is done, is I want students to be creators and not consumers of technology or media. And doing projects like this, we are transforming them. Like I said, that student, he went home and downloaded it, so now he's going to become a creator instead of a consumer. And lastly, student engagement, like talk about no behavior problems in your classroom with that scaffolding that we provide so that we're offering them success. We can then step back, observe, communicate, have conversations with them because we are setting them up for success. And Andrea now is just going to talk a little bit about that personal experience that her students were able to have because of using this type of technology.
All right, so as Shannon was explaining like the use of technology in my classroom, and in this unit, I think every single one of my students, which is unusual, was engaged in this, right from those nonverbal students with autism up to my higher functioning students. They all created a short story in their own way. It was even great, the nonverbal student was using the technology and they were able to move their figure around while the EA was kind of holding that storyline or talking. It was just amazing to watch. Another student, again, who rarely participates, sits there, I want to do this. She was laughing her head off with the EA, creating their own story, and they came over and wanted again to share, and it was just amazing to watch her blossom out of her shell by using this device and allowing that accessibility for these students that don't always get that accessibility on those paper to pencil tasks and things like that. Yeah, it was just being able to have my students connect with literacy in a positive, like engaging way was just amazing to watch, and having those parents excited to see, because we were able to share those stories out that they've done home, and parents were able to watch and have those conversations at home, so it kind of continued outside of the classroom. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, very cool. So, questions, comments? I wish we'd had this opportunity. Feels very creative.
I think every student, every person wants to experience success. And I think it's every teacher wants to inculcate that into their students. And when a teacher can take technology or an interest, I mean, we have a fly fishing course, for example, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But when we take something like that and engage students and let them experience that success, experience the joy of learning and the joy of creating. I mean, what you were describing there was joy. You know, the joy that you have in doing what it is, but the joy that the kids had in creating something. So to see that happening in our schools, you wish that it could happen more often than it does, but still, it's nice to hear that it's happening. It's nice to see that the kids are getting joy out of coming to school. So thank you very much. Anybody else?
I do, actually. Thank you for creating opportunity through technology to give voice to some of our most silent students, by giving them an opportunity to have a venue in which they can create, yeah, of course, pulling in the curriculum pieces, but really just giving them a voice to make them feel valued in our system and creative and as a contributor. And that I think is the beauty of technology, is that as we advance in technology and as we as adults become more familiar with it and use it easier, we will create that voice for those kids that have always been unheard.
Sure, I agree with you.
And thank you for emphasizing the literacies, because so much of life is about things outside of our capacity to read or write, and those are often the things that buoy us in our sense of satisfaction and sense of who we are. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Anyone else?
Well, I'd just like to say something about happiness. And I've done a lot of reading on what makes people feel happy. And when you're exploring something new and creating something, it is one of the major ways that people feel happy, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very important thing for all children, but children with special needs. You know, for them to be able to experience happiness by exploring and having fun at school, I think it's just great. So thank you very much for your approach.
I call it fill my bucket.
Yeah.
I'm a creator, and creating is filling my bucket for sure. Yeah.
I like the idea of talking about children as, you know, we're people, not just children, but people as creators rather than simply consumers. We're all consumers, but to be able to create is much more fulfilling, I think. So again, thank you for giving the opportunity for the students, some of the students, and many of the students in our district to have that experience.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Give me another 2 years, it'll be all of the students.
Good.
That wasn't an ask, was it?
If she isn't, I am.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will then move on to our business administration and final budget consultation schedule. Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yeah, so at the last board meeting, we brought a draft schedule, which was good. It was draft because when reviewing it and looking at the scale and scope of consultation that we'll have to do this year, as much as I was hoping to kind of, get it done early May, the right approach is to have follow-up sessions with the various groups that we usually do a follow-up session with. So what that means is that we're going to have to schedule an additional special board meeting on May 17th. And in the past, we've usually had a special board meeting and we haven't had to use it because our previous board meeting was just a little bit later than what it is this year, but with how it falls, to make sure that there's adequate time for thought, consideration, and consultation, we want to add another meeting where we will present the draft after having spoken to all the various stakeholders.
Any questions of Secretary Treasurer Patrick? Thank you very much. Okay. Committee reports, Superintendent Student Leadership Committee, Trustee Briggs.
We met on February 24th, Joyce, Jeremy, and myself. We had 8 students attend, a few different ones from the time before. We had an excellent tech presentation from Barb Drake that sparked feedback and questions from the students and helped us better understand some of the challenges that the tech department faces. It's a department that sometimes often taken for granted until something doesn't work. Barb let the students know that they're always welcome to provide any kind of feedback. We had a discussion about residential schools and impacts led by Deb Martel. Deb shared how the word school might land differently with families affected by residential school. We discussed equity in action and how funding works for direct services to support those that self-identify as Indigenous. We wrapped up with a discussion on current school culture and how students are feeling and coping with today's challenges. We're gonna start giving the students a heads up on future discussion topics as we receive feedback from them. They want to be able to be more prepared and have time to discuss with other students beforehand and prepare their own questions and suggestions. So our next meeting is April 14th. We'll focus on the budget, how it's made, asking for feedback, and if the board can continue to think about anything else they'd like to hear from the students.
Thank you. Any comments?
I think that's awesome. The fact that you were able to engage student voice on some very big topics. It's a very deep, thought-provoking topics is excellent. And exactly why the Student Leadership Committee was such an important piece.
Yeah, it was it was really satisfying for me to be there, despite the fact that I'm the alternate.
You're allowed to be there.
I got permission after I got there. But it was very, very satisfying. I think the level of, enthusiasm and passion and the emotional charge of it is quite contrary to what I get at Parent Advisory Council. So it was it was great.
Wonderful. Trustee Wilson.
I really like to hear that they asked for more time to prep to get topics ahead, and it means that these are topics that they are important to them, and they want to get more student input. That's awesome.
And their feedback is so thoughtful.
Yeah.
They really do want to contribute in a meaningful way.
Right. Are the agendas set half from staff and half from the students, or is there just whoever wants to submit agenda items, topics?
This is only our third meeting, so
Yeah,
we're
it's
just
been
kind
set
of.
mostly by staff, so
Yeah.
they're looking for some more agency and setting some pieces themselves, which is great.
Yes.
But you did bring to the agenda those topics that had come before, and
That's
we're
right.
needing some.
That's right. The
Yeah.
agenda itself was actually driven by what they had brought up previous meeting. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is the Vista chapter meeting on last Saturday, March 5th, and go to Trustee McMahon for that one.
Yes, it was an interesting time to spend with the Vancouver Island School Trustees. The session was started, sort of launched with about an hour and a bit of comedy routines around mental health. People who have themselves struggled with mental health issues and were practicing their stand-up comedic delivery, and I was left with a lot of ambivalence about it. I wasn't quite sure. What did you think?
Maybe they weren't funny.
Well, there was the odd funny bit, but some of it was maybe too dark for my taste.
There you go.
And also too irreverent, or I don't know, something about it. There were a few funny moments, but for the most part, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And that was followed by a presentation by Dr. Lori Adamson, and she brought to the attention of the board the program that has been initiated by Fortis to provide schools, elementary and middle schools, with educational packs around energy leadership. And so she walked us through some pieces of that, and it very obviously was propaganda in favor of gas. And so the question came up, is it in our best interests to be allowing that kind of propaganda material into schools because they provide comprehensive packs that are easy to be utilized by teachers, starting at kindergarten and going right up into middle school? So that brought up the whole conversation around sponsorship and how we assess those businesses that are allowed both into our schools and into our curriculums, into our classrooms. And I think John took the initiative to look to see if we have any policy on sponsorship, and we don't really have anything written as far as you could find. Is that right?
Yeah, I looked at, we don't have a policy on, they call it sponsorship and donations. But they also made the distinction between corporate sponsorships and donations and local businesses, which tend not to be as I guess as thorough, I guess, in the sense that these are well thought out and they're very media savvy people in their presentations. And it wasn't just Fortis. They're talking about I think Coca-Cola was one that was, Coca-Cola machines in the schools and, things like that. So they were talking just about corporate sponsorships and donations in general. And so we looked and we don't have a policy on that. And maybe it's something that the board may need to talk about, whether or not we need a policy on that.
Yeah, they did give the example of the invitation to allow Fortis in to talk about climate change would be akin to asking Coca-Cola to present on nutrition. So So it left us with some questions, and the other piece that came up was a motion that had been put forward and then I think withdrawn at the last AGM around student representation at AGM. And I think they were going to look at rewording that motion, but had made a commitment to providing some funding to allow a student to be able to attend. And again, I was feeling uncertain as to what the role of a student at the AGM might be. I don't know if it's just like a field trip for them, then that might be fine. But in terms of their ability to participate, could they be speaking on behalf of all students? Or I just didn't, there wasn't a fulsome enough discussion about what the point of it was for me to feel like I knew.
There was a lot of back and forth on that. Some people thought it was a good idea, but a lot of people thought, maybe not, like, just maybe not appropriate at this time.
Yeah, so it was an interesting but tough morning sitting there with the sun shining in.
Yeah, I'll go back to the beginning thing. The group is called Stand Up for Mental Health, stand-up comedy, I guess. I didn't actually find much of the material very funny. I mean, I could see these people, every person who presented was speaking from their perspective on mental illness. So I think the guy who had the beard and the long hair, who said that he was Jesus, I think he may have been suffering from schizophrenia, or I don't know if that's the proper term.
Certainly delusions.
Yeah, and there were other people talking about different aspects of mental illness and making light of it. There were quite a few people who really appreciated it. There were a lot of people who, one of the trustees got up and was very offended by it. So it was mixed. It had a mixed reception, shall we say?
I think it was an interesting experiment rather. It felt to me as though we were being witness to people telling their stories through comedy, through what they thought was comedy. And so I felt drawn into some role as a witness to verify or validate their experience through mental health issues. But to call it comedy was not what I felt comfortable with. But anyway, it was a good, I mean, it was an experiment, and
yeah, probably not to be repeated. The other point, I guess, is usually we have at these meetings we have a check-in time, so every district can tell, say something about what's going on. And that kind of is good to hear what's going around our 11 districts. Well, that didn't happen this year, and there were a couple of topics that I wanted to bring up from, I guess, my perspective as a trustee in this district. One of them is one of the pieces I addressed tonight, my chairperson's remark, talking to children about the stress of, extraordinary events. Another one was the cost pressures that we're facing. We never had a chance to surface any of that stuff, and I thought that would have been a valuable use of the time, but it just, well, put it this way, I walked out of there thinking that there were some good aspects of it, but it was 3.5 hours of my life that I'll never get back. So, I did get something out of it, but not 3.5 hours worth. So maybe next meeting will be a little more to my liking. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, was there a date and a host identified for the next VISTA meeting?
No.
there will be no VISTA for the fall because of the elections.
Right.
Just coming back to sponsorship and donations in schools, I don't know that it's so much a board policy, so much as it may be an operations policy, but it is a concern because there is a social enterprise on behalf of corporations that want to have endorsements through public institutions and will give, because we all need funding, will give and support different causes for that targeted advertising, basically. And you know, that is a concern. That is a concern as more and more corporations kind of take that kind of track in advertising. We'll throw you some money instead of paying for TV or social media or advertising that isn't being effective, and we'll target your specific community or group. So it might be something to maybe think about as we move forward, and maybe something to talk to our communications officer about, and whether she sees it as a trend that's building and something we should need to address.
I think, well, the intent of people who are using these programs is not to do so. Using these programs can be seen as an endorsement of the product.
And I think it was a concern also that it was kind of greenwashing the whole idea of promoting natural gas, whether it's Fortis or anyone else, that natural gas is good and lots of other things are not good. And it very much was a way of saying this is a good life is one that involves natural gas.
All right. Any other comments?
We do have policies on advertising.
Well, do you?
Within our operational procedures.
Okay.
So not within our governance policies, but within our operational procedures.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
that might be interesting to look at it.
And this is tough because it's not the first time that our district has faced, the district or provincial school districts have faced the same request. So I think most districts have some sort of policy, or in our case procedure, but it is on the operational side.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Do we have the Fortis, what are they called? Energy Leaders Education Packs in our district, do you know?
We haven't distributed them, but it's possible that the teachers
Teachers
access
have
them.
picked up on them.
Right. So then we'll move to, is there any other business? Hearing none, do we have any questions from the?
No questions have come in yet.
All right, I think probably
There won't be.
we'll wait 30 seconds and then we'll call for adjournment.
I just want to adjourn it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna adjourn it.
we're gonna be here till April now.
Until Trustee Hagan gets back.
Oh, not Daryl.
Yeah. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll do it.
Okay, all those in favor? All right, we're out of here. Thank you so much. Have a great spring break, everyone. And we'll see you in April.
It was super nice to see
Super great.
everybody.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
Mhm.